I even had one lady one time say to me after hearing this story, she said, "What'd that deer ever do to you?" Well, I'm glad you're sitting down because there's more to this tale. I used to try and tell that first story on stage, but I never told this next part. I've never talked about this on the podcast. I just haven't been ready. The wound was too fresh, but I've done a lot of therapy and I feel like I can discuss it now. But I used to have an older brother. His name was Richard Bartholomew. I knew him as Dick B. Cummins. It's a very true story. He's my older brother, and growing up, I worshiped Dick. For me, the sun rose and set on Dick. And that deer we found that day was no accident. We've been tracking that deer. It was a revenge killing. Because 6 months earlier, that same deer raped my brother Dick to death. Oh, you didn't know they could do that? Wake the fuck up, Minneapolis, in your liberal bubble with your fake news. That won't report on an epidemic of deer rape deaths. You haven't known terror until a horny buck is kicked in your front door. Which can take 2 to 3 hours, because it's less of a kick and more of a steady whittling. With their little hateful hooves, and they whittle, and they whittle. And they build the tension, they get in, and they rip off your pants. Which can take a couple of days, because they don't have fingers or thumbs. And it's less of a ripping and more of just a kind of a clumsy slapping, really. A lot of people get tired of being slapped and they take their own pants off to get it over with. Which leads to a lot of victim shaming, which is not okay. I feel like a lot of you don't believe this story. I get it, it's a lot to take in. I bet I know what you're hung up on. I bet you're thinking like, okay, so let me get this straight. So this deer gets into your house, and Dickie B is naked on the floor, at least from the waist down. But he's laying down. How would a deer with its limited range of motion and flexibility be able to kind of missionary position your brother? Like, wouldn't he have to say, help out, maybe stand up and seductively present himself to be mounted? Yeah, he did do that. It's called Stockholm Syndrome. People fall in love with their captors, doesn't make it less tragic. I still feel like a lot of you people don't believe this story. I get it. I bet I know what you're hung up on now. I bet you think, okay, even if all of that happened, which is insane, how would the deer kill your brother? I watch a lot of nature documentaries, and I have the exact size of a deer penis memorized. And I know for a fact they cannot kill a human-grown male through sodomy. Okay, he didn't die literally. He died figuratively when he left our family to start a new life in the woods with his deer lover, which was tough for me to emotionally process. R.I.P. Dickie B, I miss you, brother. I know that was a lot. I want you to know that I know that was a lot. I know that joke's not for everyone. I run a lot of these stories by my wife, Lindsay, before I tell them on stage. She's great. And I told that story to Lindsay before I ever told it to an audience, and I believe her exact feedback was, that's fucking dumb. Tough but fair, okay? Maybe that's not the funniest story you've ever heard, but I don't just grade new comedic topics on just humor. I have 2 categories. How funny is it? And how original is it? And maybe that's not the funniest story, but I dare you to find another comic out there telling a long-form story about his fake brother being fake raped by a fake deer to fake death. Has some value for me. I was just trying to talk about hunting and I got sidetracked.